Jesse Schell is by far one of the most dynamic speakers on video games that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He's best known for a video that went quite viral from a DICE conference 3 years ago, where he pretty much coined the term gamification, the sense that the logic of video games can be applied to very mundane things, like getting points for brushing your teeth in the morning. It really started to affect people, especially when he talked about how you can look at life as an RPG. It's a very interesting concept. So I could not pass up on the opportunity to sit down with him here at GDC. Very, very happy to be joined by Jesse Schell. He is the CEO of Schell Games and the Distinguished Professor of Entertainment Technology at Carnegie Mellon University. He's also known for having one of the most popular videos I've ever seen of your talk at DICE 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2010.
Now, it's funny, you were at DICE this year, and you kind of refuted a lot of your gamification statements from earlier on. What brought about the change of heart?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was a refutation so much. The initial talk was meant to be very provocative to get people thinking about it, and I was able to, over the last 3 years, I've learned a lot about human psychology and what is it that makes people want to do things, and I was just bringing more of that to light.
But since you've had that talk, that term gamification, it is pervasive. It is out there. Are you seeing it being applied in non-gaming spaces like cereal, like toothpaste? Are you seeing that shift happening in marketing?
Oh yeah, it's definitely happening. Since I gave that talk where I talked about getting points for brushing your teeth, 3 different companies have released toothbrushes that give you points for brushing your teeth. And we're seeing it in everything. You're seeing people experimenting with new coupon schemes. We're seeing all kinds of ways to get badges online. Everybody's experimenting with, what if we give you points for this, or badges for that, or prizes for the other thing. There's hundreds and thousands of experiments going on everywhere.
Now, do you think it's because of video games, or did we always have that innate need for certification, for collection, for kind of proof of doing the right thing?
Yeah, What this is really about is a fundamental shift in the nature of our economy. In ancient times, we had a survival economy. You're trying to figure out what you need to survive. In the 19th, 20th century, we had what I call an efficiency economy. Let's try and make things be as efficient as possible. And now we're moving into more of a pleasure-based economy. More and more of our choices, because the world and society is getting more affluent, we can afford to say, you know what, I'm going to pick the foods that I like because they're pleasurable, and the car I like because it's pleasurable, and the job I like because it's pleasurable. And once the world is kind of thinking in that mode, bringing game structures into everyday life makes a lot of sense, because games have no purpose other than to be pleasurable. And so that kind of design is what game designers know best.
So how does that shift what happens with games? If all this game logic is in the plain aspects of our life, do the games then shift to fill some other void?
It's a really interesting question. There's so many things happening with the way games are shifting around. All the ability to download and all the new platforms have created this incredible diversity of evolution in games, the different payment models and systems. And yeah, it is true that if certain structures that get absorbed into the school system, when you go home, you're not going to want that same structure when you're doing your entertainment. So there probably is a little bit of a balance that way, a little bit of a balancing act that's going to start to happen.
Obviously, and this is GDC, so there's always a lot of talk of shifts, disruptive things that are happening in the game industry. There's free to play, where we're seeing mobile really seems to be this threat in some people's minds and not in others. What are you seeing in the landscape? Is something taking the lead? Is there the new normal for games?
Yeah, free to play is definitely kind of part of the new normal. It's not going to go away. It's not a fad. It is free to play is definitely here to stay. It's not going to take over everything, but it's going to make its mark, and it's going to change things. And I think if anything, it's going to it's going to suck some things into it. Some things that didn't used to be free to play are going to go free to play. Other things are going to be pushed in the opposite direction. So, for example, I think the existence of free to play is going to lead us to the $99 console title. I think that's going to become a real thing, because you're trying to be as opposite from free to play as possible.
Now, could it also bring about, and we've seen a couple instances of this, but like the $40 title. I think one of the big concerns is, and a lot of our audience sees that, is that games that seem to have unnecessary bloat. a multiplayer mode that really isn't natural to the universe, but it's there so you don't sell it back. But what if the game could just be sold at a lower cost because you're not spending all the money to build out something people won't play?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to see people experimenting with every conceivable pricing model because anything is possible right now. You could price it any way you want. And everybody's going to try a lot of things, and we're going to see where things land, where things gravitate. And I think the answer is we're going to see many successful models for many different successful areas, for different niches.
I was just at an event put on by Sony where they're really showing all the indie games, that they're trying to make that barrier to entry of getting it onto the PlayStation Network very, very low.
Yeah.
And they're letting them do their own pricing. I mean, is that almost letting the inmates run the asylum? I mean, are there dangers there as well, or is it just kind of a natural organic system?
Well, it's a little thing we call capitalism, and it has its pros and cons, right? The pros are it's really good for the consumer, because you have this race to the bottom where everybody is trying to they experiment with prices and get the lowest prices possible. It can be tough on the game developers. It's a massive bloodbath. You're gonna, hey, you want to release an iOS game? Well, great. There's 350 coming out every day. That's what you're going to compete with, and most of those are free. And I would say 90% of the people putting games in the marketplace don't care if they make money. Now, go in there and make money, and don't forget, 90% of the money is made by the top 2% of games. Good luck, everybody.
As someone who was very, very young, but knew about the video game crash of the 80s when Atari just had saturated the market. I mean, there are some parallels. You don't have the physical media, you don't have the cost of the cartridge, but you are getting that sense of there's so much out there that it almost becomes deafening, and that people just turn for something else as their entertainment.
Yeah, so what people forget is how much of what happens in the market is driven by novelty. So much is about human beings wanting to check out something new. Let me see what that is. Does that fit into my life? Let me try it out. And the video game crash in the 80s was kind of innovation sort of slowed down. The hardware had kind of topped out. There was nothing particularly new coming out. Stayed expensive. The market was oversaturated. People were a little sick of it. Novelty dropped off, and it fell off a cliff. But I don't think we're going to see that right now, because we're about to see a lot of new technologies come out that I think are going to be somewhat revolutionary. We may see a dip for a couple years. I wouldn't want to be in the AAA console business right now, for example. I think that's a scary place to be, but I do think some of the things that are coming are going to really rejuvenate people's interest.
With the AAA titles, that's where a lot of people do feel there's a lack of innovation. That we're just sequel after sequel. There are games coming out in franchises that haven't been away long enough for us to miss them. Yeah. And where would you like to see some innovation go, some experimentation go? Because we're going to have new consoles that are quite powerful.
Oh, well, we're going to see experimentation in every realm. I don't think I need to wish for it, because the marketplace is so competitive. People are going to be trying anything and everything. Me personally, the kind of things I get most excited about are games that really connect you with family and friends. I think that's something that people are crying out for. You look at the success of something like Words with Friends, that really stems from people want to find a way to connect and play games with their friends. And I'm hoping the next round of consoles has a little more of ways to do that.
With the rise of those social games, the way that people are connecting, it's kind of a way to stay in touch. That really did blow up. Words with Friends being probably the best example of that. What's the sweet spot that a game like that hits that just makes it just so kind of compulsive and people really got engaged with it?
Well, different games are really different. I think with Words with Friends, first of all, it's a game everybody knows. Everybody knows how to play Scrabble, and if you ask your friend to play, you don't have to be like, let me teach you this game, there's the purple dragon. You don't need to do any of that, because it's like Scrabble. You like Scrabble? Of course you like Scrabble. And I send it to you, and then it's completely asynchronous. So it's zero imposition on my life. I can just check it when I want to check it and do it when I want to do it, and I know how to do it and you know how to do it. And since it's a word game anyway, it's easy for us to send messages. So now suddenly I'm having a conversation with my mom every day, which is something that wasn't in my life, before. And so people really like that. So much of this is, it's all about subtlety. There's all these little subtle things in the way they connect. Make a big difference with the social games, which is what makes them tough.
You teach young people, younger than me. I'll put it that way. To get them to start thinking about making games. What kind of trends are you seeing in sort of the next generation of developers?
Oh, yeah, interesting question. I mean, what's exciting about students who are kind of learning game design, game development right now is they're doing this surrounded by an atmosphere of successful indie games. When I started doing this 10 years ago, everybody's aspiration was, well, I'm hoping to go to EA and I'm hoping to go to these big companies to kind of work on these big games. And now people see things, the success of Minecraft and so many, successful indie games, and they're like, hey, I want to do that. I want to bust out a little indie game and have it be successful and run that. So that's a big change. They're having to think in entrepreneurial ways that they didn't have to think about before.
I mean, do they kind of see themselves as rebels? I mean, I see this with the Ouya, that there seems to be a lot of interest around it because it's kind of running contrary to the spirit of entrenched companies like Sony and like Microsoft. I mean, do they kind of have that spirit when they're thinking about making indie games?
Some of them definitely do. Some of them are like, hey, I want to do something that isn't out there, that runs counter to what everybody else is already doing. Which sounds great, but the problem is there's thousands of people who are thinking that right now, which means, again, it's tough, but all you got to have is the right idea in the right place and the right time, and it's a good time for that.
Are you also seeing more diversity? I mean, that's one of the things I think that has people excited about indie games is it's not telling the same kind of testosterone-fueled story.
Yeah, no, there's so many, there's so much incredible diversity. There's room for everything right now. No matter what you're into, if you can make an experience for a handful of people who are excited about it, there's room for that, which is what's so exciting. There's so many things you can try and so many things you can do, and then at the same time the technology is changing like that. I mean, we just had Samsung now has their eye interface, for the Galaxy 4. And so now you can play games with your eyes. Like, what? And there's a lot to figure out.
So for some of the people out there that have considered making games or going into, the academy to learn from people like you, I mean, what do you advise? What are you looking for in a student?
Yeah, so now our program at Carnegie Mellon is a master's level program. So we're looking for students who have maybe had an arts background or a computer engineering background or multimedia background or even psychology or business or anything. And we teach them how to work with interdisciplinary teams in order to invent and create these new things. We're always looking for people who are really talented at something and are really excited about working with people outside their discipline. There's a lot of choices out there. I don't think there's any one right answer. I personally am a big advocate of maybe a more traditional undergraduate education as opposed to necessarily diving in to like a game design undergraduate major.
So you think maybe a liberal arts or more of a science degree in the undergrad?
It could be all kinds of things. It could be, hey, are you into writing? Maybe you should learn about writing, right? If you're into literature or philosophy or computer science or art, like all of these things, you look at the successful game designers out there, they come from all kinds of places. Will Wright came from architecture, and you can see it in his work.
Yes.
Brian Reynolds came from a history background. You can see it in his work. I mean, so you really can approach this field from many different directions. And I worry sometimes that if you use your early college years too much to just be about games, that I don't know. I'm not
don't
sure
have the breadth of experience and knowledge.
Right, and you can feel a little watery sometimes. But for some people, it's exactly the right thing to do. You really have to kind of find your own path.
And you have a new project that's about to launch in about a month or so.
Yeah, we're in closed alpha right now, but in late April we're going to be going into open beta, and it's called gamesprout. The whole idea is, for people who have a game idea, you've got a game idea, you post it here. Everybody comments on it, the whole community comments, and everybody votes, and the top ideas, we have professional developers who start prototyping them and put them back to the community. So the community can play test them, say what they think. We give homework back to the person who submitted it to kind of make it better. If they do and it gets voted up again, it goes around the cycle a few times. If it goes around far enough that it's looking good, we'll say, you know what, we'd like to make this, we'd like to fund this, we'd like to ship this, and then we'll split the money with you.
Well, it sounds like a really good opportunity for people who don't really understand all the vagaries of making a game to really kind of see it it's kind of like making sausage, what they say about politics. There's some ugly parts to it.
Yeah, no, one of our little tagline is we want to make game development a spectator sport, right? So that you can either show up and be part of it, or you can just watch and vote, because even people who vote are eligible for a share of the revenue from the thing, because we want people to be a part. And I was partly inspired because I'd written a book, The Art of Game Design, which has been pretty successful, and the whole idea of game design education's really important to me, and this idea of having a kind of a dojo where we could just sort of all practice together and train in public so everyone could see was very appealing to me. And so far we only have 150 people in this alpha. There's already like 70 ideas in there, and a few of them are just incredible. I'm like really hoping we're going to make them. So I'm very excited about this process.
And I have to say, as a member of the press, this runs so contrary to the hyper-secretive qualities of AAA game design. I cannot tell you how exciting it actually sounds to me.
Yeah, no, it's fun just to put it all out in public, because the thing is true. It's like stealing ideas. Someone steals your idea, by the time they're done making it, it's going to be a totally different game, Yeah. And there's so many. One of the secrets of the game industry is there's no shortage of ideas. Every game developer in the world has like 100 ideas they wish they could do and they never have time for. There's ideas everywhere. So it's okay to put them out there and share them. And the more ideas you make and the more you get good at that, the better your ideas are going to get.
Well, I'm very excited to hear more about GameSprout. I hope you come back when this thing gets into its beta and we start to see what those games are out there. But for the time being, thank you so much,
All right,
Jesse.
thank you, sir.